There's no question that the weapons of Monster Hunter can be complex, many requiring dozens of hunts in order to start developing a level of proficiency. While there are some, such as the Great Sword and Hammer, that are relatively straightforward, for those weapons with more advanced mechanics, there can be a large divide in the community in regards to how the weapon can be used and how it should be used. And few weapons embody this stigma more so than the subject of today's video. What we have here is the Insect Glaive. Howdy y'all, my name is Kanan96 and welcome to the Agony of Gaming, the satirical review series where the facts are optional and the cringe is inevitable. Hey, and drop a like on the video if you think that a real-life Kinsect would be the most terrifying thing on the planet. Send that crap back to Australia because I want nothing to do with it. This week's weapon is yet again one I had no experience with beforehand. When I was playing Monster Hunter World, I had no trouble with mounting the monster, and I was told that the damage output wasn't the best. So when I started using this thing for the first time live on stream, I was worried that I would make a fool of myself and I'd be using my live stream death counter quite often. While the former is pretty much a guarantee, I was surprised when the latter didn't happen. Before ever using this thing, I was convinced that it was a rudimentary and simple weapon. Just a rapid attacking staff that you can launch yourself in the air with. Man, was I ever wrong. It seemed like every time I thought I had a grasp on what I was doing, there was one more thing to learn right around the corner. I'm going to find a way to make sure this video isn't 15 minutes long. I don't know how yet, but I will. I think it's best we start with the weapon's namesake and talk about the Kinsect. Basically what they are, what they do, and how you use them. Because it is a pretty large factor in adding to the complexion of this weapon. And it's going to be pretty difficult to talk about without also being boring! Starting with what they are. Horrifyingly humongous bugs that chill on your arm while using this weapon. Well, at least on the surface level. In actuality, they're more like a specialty piece of equipment unique to the Insect Glaive that is not only used to enhance the hunter's overall effectiveness in combat, but also assist with combat as well. And I suppose some of them look pretty neat, as well as terrifying. Now, as far as what they do, in combat their primary purpose is to gather extracts for you, which come in 3 different flavors: red, white, and orange. The red juice causes your hunter to deal additional attacks during their basic combos. The white juice gives you a movement speed increase, and combining white and red will increase your damage, while the orange juice gives you knockback prevention. But when you combine all 3, you get a damage increase again, as well as full earplugs and everything I just mentioned. You are going to be gathering extracts from monsters quite frequently in a fight, and so the different Kinsect's abilities to do that is what really distinguishes them. Moving on to the nitty-gritty, they come in 2 different damage types: blunt for racking up exhaust points and potentially getting a KO off to add a little extra disrespect, and severing for the theoretical possibility of cutting a tail. Yeah, if you have ever personally witnessed this bug severing the tail of a monster while on the hunt, comment below because I want to hear all about it. Now, excluding normal for obvious reasons, we have 3 Kinsect types: assist, powder, and speed. Starting with my favorite, the assist type Kinsect. If you have all 3 colors of the extract rainbow, then with certain weapon attacks, your Kinsect will deal damage alongside you. If you use your Insect Glaive to mark a target, which is something else we'll talk about later, and you're using a powder type Kinsect, it will deploy automatically and produce a cloud of fart gas when attacking the monster. This fart gas, with the incredibly original name of Kinsect Powder, can actually be popped by hunters' attacks to do a little extra damage and build up ailment blights. And then finally, the speed type Kinsect. When it's just resting on your arm, it'll charge itself up, and then eventually glow blue along with the bulb at the end of your weapon. When it is fully charged and you launch it at a monster, it'll deal a pretty unnoticeable amount of extra damage. For any further questions, please see this video by Arekkz Gaming on the Kinsects specifically. That way I can save like 5 minutes of talking. Now, if you're not one of those free-thinking types, or you just like to be told what to do, I don't know, maybe you're a Gunlance main, and having the choice of 12 different Kinsects is just too much to wrap your little head around, then just use the Carnage Beetle, because it has the attack type that's actually useful, the Kinsect type that you don't have to micromanage, and the ability that gets you a 2-for-1 bonus on your monster extract juices. It flies slower than a fat chick rolling up a hill, but you'll get used to it. Now, let's talk about how to use this thing, and finally, after over 1,000 words of scripting, talk about the weapon this video is about. The moveset for the Insect Glaive itself is relatively straightforward. It's really all that Kinsect shenanigans that can be complicated, so let's get that nonsense out of the way first. Pretty much your Kinsect is controlled entirely with ZR. By holding it with the weapon drawn, you will bring up a little reticule to help aim your Kinsect. Then you can press X to launch it, and once it's gotten the extract, press A to recall it. This is important because the different color extracts represent different body parts of the monster. You can't just get all three instantly. Now this is probably the most frustrating part of using the Kinsect, because the monsters are all kind of built differently. Even if some of them mechanically share the same skeleton, because game development is hard, just keep in mind that you should put a generally with a capital G in front of everything I'm about to say. The red extract, which is arguably the most important, comes from the monster's head, and sometimes the primarily damaging body part of monsters, such as tails. The white comes from body parts associated with movement, usually the legs and sometimes the wings. And finally, the orange comes from the main monster body, which I would consider the monster's center of mass. Now, if any of that sounds vague and unhelpful, well, all I can say is, welcome to the Insect Glaive. If you use the Carnage Beetle that gives you a 2-for-1 special, you'll have a significantly easier time getting this nonsense. Now, should you find yourself having difficulty getting a specific extract from a monster location, you can use what is known as marking. There are 3 different ways to mark a target. The first one, and arguably the easiest, is firing a Kinsect Shock by pressing ZL while holding ZR. Next, if you just press ZR with the weapon drawn, you will do a melee that marks the target. This isn't as safe as using the shot mechanic, but you can work it into your melee combos to easily acquire extract on a monster that is vulnerable. And the more advanced form of this melee method is the Tetraseal Slash. One of your switch skills, the Tetraseal Slash, is a multi-hit attack that concludes with a mark being placed on the monster. It has pretty good damage, but leaves you vulnerable while it's going off. Because of its slow nature, I tend to use the other skill instead. Alright, I mentioned 2 skills already, so let's just transition to the Insect Glaive itself, because I am so freaking tired of talking about that damn bug. A bit of a disclaimer though. Everything regarding combat I'm about to discuss and show you will be with my hunter under the effects of the red extract. I want to reiterate that when using the Insect Glaive, you should always try to have at least the red one activated, if not all 3. Otherwise, you're kind of just wasting your time. Starting with boots on the ground combat, it is very easy to remember. Simply press the X button 3 times, then follow up with the A button until you're done. Repeat for maximum DPS. I haven't felt this mindless while fighting a monster since using the dual blades. And after all this time, let us finally talk about the fun bits of using this weapon. While holding ZL and pressing the B button, your hunter will use the Insect Glaive to launch themselves into the air, from which you can do an aerial dodge that is great for repositioning, but more importantly, you can also do an aerial attack. With just a single press of the A button, your hunter will flip that staff around themselves, dealing multiple hits on target, with the final hit concluding in your hunter launching themselves back into the air. Now, there are some limitations, such as each one of these costing stamina, and even if you don't run out of stamina, you're only able to launch yourself 2 more times, after which your feet must touch the ground before the aerial shenanigans can begin again. Back in the ye old Monster Hunter days of 2013, and before every weapon and its mama got some form of aerial maneuver, this vaulting mechanic made the Insect Glaive the primo weapon for mounting monsters. And I must say, it is still one of the biggest draws for this thing, and probably a large factor into why I didn't die a single time on stream while using it. because while most monsters are designed to dominate at eye level, there are few that can really compete with a hunter who spends a large amount of the fight in the air. Now, unfortunately, it is slightly balanced in the fact that your combos on the ground are stronger than the ones in the air. And there are some Monster Hunter elitists that won't hesitate to remind you of that fact. This is the part from the intro when I mentioned the stigma for the insect glaive in regards to what you can do and what you should do. You can vault all over the place, flipping that staff around while dealing damage and having the time of your life. But what some pro gamers say you should do is stand on the ground mashing the X and A buttons until the hunt is over, because soaring through the air is suboptimal. Now, these elitist players aren't everywhere, but they do pop up if you start talking about how much fun you had while playing Monster Hunter. They'll tell you that you should leave your fun at the door and only be concerned with maximum damage, with the biggest offender being Reddit. If you have any opinions about anything regarding Monster Hunter, I would just stay away from that place. Actually, staying away from Reddit is generally a good policy. That place can be terrible. Man, I've been talking about so many other things, I almost forgot two of the best skills for the insect glaive. The diving wyvern is a carryover move from the previous game, where your hunter can launch themselves in the air and fling back down with incredible speed to deal a large amount of single hit damage. And it can even be done while already in the air as a good way of finishing off all those aerial shenanigans. It is extremely precise though, so it can be hard to land, just takes a little practice. Next is the Recall Kinsect. This is an evasive maneuver that upon activation can cause your Kinsect to suck a little life juice out of the monster and give it to your hunter instead. The details on how this is actually done is something we just don't think about. While also recharging all of your bug's stamina. Did I mention that your Kinsect has its own stamina bar? I probably forgot to mention that. This couples well with the powder Kinsect if your goal is to get that fart gas all over the fighting area as much as possible. In combat, the insect glaive has a characteristic to it that I honestly wasn't expecting, and that is survivability. I believe a direct cause for this is that it's very mobile in the air. When starting off, I was well aware of the mediocre but consistent damage, and the fact that the insect glaive tends to dominate the airspace around most monsters, but for some reason, I just didn't think it would be so easy to not die while using this thing. I am more than likely going to be eating those words while trying to gather footage for this video, but still, playing with this thing for 10 hours without a single cart is kind of impressive when you consider my track record with this weapon review series. Before working on this video, I would have never given this weapon the time of day. But afterwards, I think it's safe to say it grew on me a bit, and I'll make sure it doesn't gather dust in the item box from here on out. I would like to sincerely thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider giving it a like and subscribing if you haven't done so already. Here's hoping I don't upload this video without any audio like I did the last one. Alright, that is 11 down and 3 to go. Kind of crazy to think it's almost been 3 months since I started doing this series. And as the finish line gets closer and closer, all I can think about is what happens next. I'd love to hear your opinion, so comment down below if you think that something like Monster Hunter Stories 2 would be a suitable candidate to start making content on. Next video is either going to be on the lance or the heavy bowgun. Two weapons I've been kind of lukewarm about, but haven't used them all that much. So let's see if 3 nights of streaming can change my mind. So until then, this is not goodbye for good, just goodbye for now.
No, I'm stunned. I'm stunned.
Oh, get walked on! Get walked on! Yeah! Get it, Otter! Yeah! Oh, I love to see it. Love to see it.
That could not have been closer.
Oh, that was perfect.
The following day.
Oh no, not again. Not again.
Not again.
Not again.
Oh,
Not again.
oh.
Not again.
Oh,
Not
get
again.
walked on! Oh, I had every opportunity to use Dust of Life and I didn't.